Have you ever seen someone remove their own head, calmly, as if it were nothing more than fixing their hair? In the corridors of a centuries-old Peruvian school, the air carried the weight of forgotten prayers. Students whispered about creaking floors, but no one dared speak of what lurked in the mirrors. Luciana Ramos, a new student, thought the stories were childish. That night, staying late for detention, she heard the scrape of a chair across the empty classroom. When she turned, her breath locked in her throat. A girl sat at the desk, comb in hand, but where her face should have been, there was only a gaping neck, smooth and dark. On the floor beside her lay her head, calmly smiling, its long black hair spilling like river water. Luciana told herself it was a dream, until she watched the girl lift her head, place it back onto her shoulders, and blink. Not everyone left the school when the bell rang. Tomás Quintero, the night guard, had walked those halls for 20 years. He thought he had seen everything: fights, vandalism, even candles burned for midnight rituals. But nothing prepared him for the sound that drifted from the empty classroom. The slow, deliberate drag of a comb against hair. When he pushed the door open, the room looked empty. Desks in place, chalk untouched. Only the faint smell of jasmine hung in the air, impossible, since no flowers grew nearby. Then he noticed it. A strand of hair, impossibly long and still warm, resting on the teacher's desk. His chest tightened. Tomás wasn't a man easily frightened. But this was not the first time he'd found hair where no one should have been. And each time, another student had vanished without explanation. Señora Valeria Paredes, a literature teacher nearing retirement, had always believed schools carried ghosts of their own. Not spirits, but memories of children who laughed, cried, and vanished into adulthood. Yet on that particular evening, as the last rays of sun filtered through cracked windows, she felt something far more present. While grading essays, she heard footsteps pacing above her classroom. But the floor above had been sealed for decades after a fire. Dust should have been the only thing moving there. Her throat tightened as the sound grew heavier. Slow, deliberate, like bare feet dragging across wooden planks. She rose, papers trembling in her hands. The air shifted, carrying with it a fragrance she hadn't smelled since her childhood in Ayacucho. The sweet, suffocating scent of burning coca leaves used in rituals. When she opened the closet to check for mice, her breath collapsed. Inside, a single school uniform hung neatly on a hook, clean, pressed, but with no body to fill it. Long strands of black hair slid down its shoulders, as if the invisible wearer had just stepped out. Valeria dropped the papers. She should have run. Instead, she whispered the name of a girl she remembered from years past. One who never returned after detention. The classroom door slammed shut behind her. Emilio Cáceres had not spoken a word since his sister vanished from the same school 5 years earlier. Teachers labeled him troubled. Doctors said his silence was self-inflicted. Yet his classmates whispered that Emilio saw something the night she disappeared, and chose never to name it. That afternoon, while others laughed in the courtyard, Emilio sat alone at the far wall, sketching in the dirt with a broken piece of chalk. His drawings were always the same. A figure seated in a chair, a detached head lying beside it, strands of hair curling outward like rivers. When one of the younger students leaned closer, Emilio's hand froze. He pressed the chalk so hard it cracked, carving a jagged mark through the earth. Then he raised his eyes. His pupils were wide, reflecting nothing but fear, as if he was watching something behind the child that no one else could see. Moments later, the wind swept across the playground, scattering dust into their lungs. From the far corner of the yard came the faintest sound, metal scraping against wood, as if a comb was being dragged again and again through endless hair. The other children laughed nervously, but Emilio's face drained of color. He stood, dropped the chalk, and ran without a single word. Marisol Rivera was known not for beauty or grades, but for her voice. Every festival, her songs carried through the valleys, pulling neighbors to their doors. But after rehearsal in the school's old chapel, she refused to sing again. She had stayed late to practice when the lights flickered. Her melody faltered as she noticed the choir benches shifting, though no wind touched them. At first she thought it was the echo of her own song bouncing back. Then she heard it. Another voice, soft and breathless, harmonizing with hers from the shadows. Marisol froze. The voice was sweet, almost tender but hollow, as if the throat that produced it had been severed from the body. She dropped her sheet music, its pages scattering across the stone floor. A lock of black hair fell onto the parchment, curling into words she could not understand. Her chest tightened with a terror she could not name. When she stumbled outside, classmates asked why her lips trembled but no sound came. Marisol never answered. She only clutched her throat, eyes fixed on the chapel door, as if the song inside had never truly ended. Rogelio Huanca spent his life among the dead. As the village gravedigger, he knew every stone in the cemetery behind the school, every mound of soil where families wept. He thought nothing could unsettle him, not coffins carried in silence, not the cries of mothers at midnight burials. But one dusk, while digging a fresh grave, his spade struck something soft instead of earth. At his feet lay a braid of human hair, long and shining, coiled like a snake beneath the dirt. It had not decayed. It was warm as if just cut. Rogelio tried to toss it aside, but the braid clung to his palm, tightening around his wrist until blood rose beneath the skin. His knees buckled, breath ragged, as he heard a faint humming, like a girl singing to herself while combing. The wind swept across the cemetery, carrying the smell of burning incense and wet stone. When Rogelio turned, he saw a school uniform neatly folded on a gravestone. Resting atop it was a severed head, eyes open, lips curved into a smile he would never forget. By dawn, Rogelio locked his shed, quit his post, and vanished from the town without farewell. Those who knew him say he never dug another grave again. Isidora Llanos, a cleaning woman at the school, always finished her rounds after everyone else had gone home. She took pride in scrubbing desks polished clean, in leaving the classroom silent and orderly. But one night, she noticed a chair still pulled out, as if a student had just risen. When she bent to push it in, her hand brushed against strands of hair spread across the seat. They were silky, freshly brushed, still carrying the faint scent of perfumed oil. Her stomach tightened. She turned slowly, and there it was. A girl seated at the back desk, her head resting beside her hand, comb sliding through the loose locks with impossible patience. The face looked alive, eyes blinking as if nothing was wrong. Isidora wanted to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. The girl smiled faintly, lifting her head and placing it back on her shoulders in one effortless motion. Then, with her comb still in hand, she whispered something no one else would ever hear. By dawn, Isidora's cart stood abandoned in the corridor. Mop water spilled across the floor. No one ever found her. Only that same chair remained pulled out, strands of black hair draped across its seat, waiting. The story of the headless girl is told in hushed voices still, because every school has one desk no one dares sit in. Subscribe to The Veil of Secret for more gripping true horror stories.